Hi, my name is Karen Dalsgaard, and today we're going to look at how to do an experiment that can help us understand why leaves change color in fall. Now, before we start looking at why leaves change color, it might be helpful to know why leaves are green in the first place. Leaves are the organs of the plant that can do the almost magical trick of taking their energy from sunlight and using it to build air and water into almost anything. They do it by a process called photosynthesis, where they take the air and the water and combine it to building blocks that the plant can then later on use to build starch, sugar, wood, fibers. Any plant material you can think of is basically made out of air and water and just a few micronutrients. Now, to do something as amazing as that, obviously the leaves, they need a lot of different molecular tools. One of the most important of these, or some of the most important of these, are the chlorophylls. And those are the ones that make the leaves green, because chlorophylls are a very bright green color. Now, as fall approaches, leaves, they start preparing to shut down. The reason why most broadleaf trees in our climate lose their leaves in fall is because otherwise they might continue to lose water in winter, but the plants would not be able to get more water because the ground is frozen, the stems are frozen, and so water cannot be transported. So to avoid freeze drying, the trees, they pack up the leaves much the way we would pack up a house when we plan on moving. The leaves, they take some of the complex molecules like chlorophyll and break them down like we break down furniture. Then they take all the bits that are really important, nutrients, sugars, things like that, that they need for the next year for making new leaves, and they store them in the trunk and in the roots. And finally, the rest of the things they can just leave behind. They fall off of the tree. That's like the things we throw away. Now, to see why that makes the leaves change color, we're going to do an experiment to try to see what pigments are in the leaves at any given stage. What we need for this experiment is a lot of different leaves, like we have here. We're going to try to look at some that turn yellow, like we have box elder here, that turn from green to yellow. And we're going to look at some that turn red, like here this is dogwood. It's one of the ones that turn from green to red. Besides from the leaves, you're going to need a few other things. Rubbing alcohol, which you can buy in a drug mart. You're going to need some way of making the leaves into a pulp, like a mortar. We're going to need scissors for cutting the leaves. We're going to need glasses, as many glasses as we have different leaves. And you need a pot of hot water. So what we do first is we take the leaves, and then we need to cut them into little bits to make it easier to mash them up. Then you add a little bit of rubbing alcohol to this. Just a few drops at first. And then we're going to grind up the leaf. It takes a bit of work. So once we have made this into a nice mash, nice pulp, we're going to add a little bit more rubbing alcohol, just a little bit, just to dissolve it. Swirl it around a bit and pour it into a glass and check that we should have at least about a centimeter of liquid, so we want to add a little bit more. And then we put it in the pot with hot water. There should just be a couple of centimeters of hot water in the bottom. And then you repeat that with the other leaves, and then we leave this to stand for at least an hour. 2 hours is also fine. While you wait for the pigments to dissolve, you'll have plenty of time to prepare filter paper strips. You just take a regular coffee filter, here's what I already cut some strips from, and cut strips out of that. And you'll want nice long strips, so cut them along the whole length. You're going to need one strip for each glass. After an hour has passed, you're going to take out your glasses, and they should look something like this. Really good dark green color in the ones from the green leaves, and other colors in the ones from other color leaves. And then you just add a strip of paper into each. What we're doing here is something called chromatography. In chromatography, we use the fact that some molecules, the lighter ones, they are easier to transport up through the paper, and so they tend to reach a higher level than the heavier or the charged ones that don't move so easily through the filter paper. And so we'll get bands of distinct molecules, and the ones that are colored we'll be able to see. So we're going to repeat this with all 4 of the glasses. And now this is going to have to stand for quite a long time. This experiment often goes wrong for people, and the reason it normally goes wrong for people is that people tend to be too impatient and they don't wait long enough. It's easy to think that once the fluid has moved up into the paper, everything is fine. In reality, you're going to have to leave it to stand for 2 hours or more. 2 hours will give a beginning of a pattern, but really it gets more strong over time, and if you can leave it overnight, that's really the best. After leaving it overnight, you should see something like this. In each of these 2 pairs, one is for the overnight, and one has just been left for 2 hours. So you can see the difference between leaving it for a long time and a short time. And as we see in the box elder here, that's still green. The green leaves, they have a lot of green pigments, the chlorophylls especially, but they also do have the yellows and the oranges that we get from the carotenes and the xanthophylls. So the carotenes and xanthophylls that make the leaves yellow, they're actually present all throughout summer, but we can't normally see them because they get covered by the green of the chlorophyll. Now, as the chlorophyll gets broken down in fall, that allows us suddenly to see the yellows of the carotenes and xanthophylls, and we can see the chlorophyll, there's not much left of it, there's just a faint green band here. With leaves that turn red, it's slightly different. In the dogwood over here, we can see that in green dogwood we have a lot of the greens. We have some oranges and yellows also, but we don't have very many reds at all in the green leaf. So the reds are not present in summer. Instead, the reds, they get made as fall approaches and as the leaf changes color. These are anthocyanins, and it's not totally obvious why leaves make them in fall. They're only made in some leaves, but it may be to protect the leaf during the storing process. Now that you know how to do this experiment, you're ready to go and do it together with your children and look at what pigments the various leaves have at different times during the fall. Just remember that a lot of leaves are poisonous. So if you do use something that you also use for food in this experiment, it's really important that it's cleaned incredibly well. It would be even better really to just have separate tools for science experiments altogether. Thank you so much for joining me here today.